Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos of Chav Zayin on Chavav Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara L'Rava, the Amar Shloish Shloish Bishar B'Godim Ikebinayu. Now we're in the middle of a discussion here. We brought a Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, who taught us that in order for a beged to be makabel tuma, to be susceptible for tuma, whether it's tumas negoim, to come tummy when it has a nega, or tumas shratzim, to receive tuma by touching a sheretz, in order for it to be considered a beged in that regard, it needs to consist of exclusively either semer or pishtim. Either one of those fabrics, those materials are suitable, considered to be prominent materials, and a beged, a garment produced with those materials, can indeed become tamid. That was the brisa from Tanat Rabbi Shmuel. But the Gemara began the sugya on Chavav Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the bottom, with another brisa of Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer. And perhaps let's take a peek there to gain clarity about the upcoming Gemara. So Reb Shimon ben Elazar said, "Kol hayotzim min eitz," anything that comes from a tree, a branch, etc., it will not have a din of tumas begadim. So shalosh al shalosh is the smallest size beged, 3 etzbois, 3 finger widths by 3 finger widths, so it's 3 by 3 etzbois, which is suitable to be used as a patch, the Gemara said. So any type of tree, any type of branch that is used to make this fabric, this material, this beged, will not produce a beged that is makabel tumah, except chutz pishtim, except it's made from flax. And as Gemara concluded that he's coming to tell us that a beged must contain either semer or pishtim, either wool or linen, in order for it to be considered a beged to be makabel tumah. Okay, so these 2 shittis, the Tanya, the Rabbi Shimon Elazar, and the Tanya Rabbi Shmuel, seem to be saying the same thing, that only semer or pishtim can produce a beged which is makabel tumah. So indeed, Abaye holds that they both concur, they both hold the same thing. Abaye told us that Tanya Rabbi Shmuel and Shimon Elazar, Amr Davar Echad, they're both on the same wavelength, they're both on the same page, they both hold that only Timur Pishtim is considered to be a beged for Kabbalah's Tumah, regardless of what type of Tumah, whether it's Tumas Negoyim or Tumas Shratzim. Rabbi, however, disagreed, somewhat. In a small way, he said, well, in the general, regarding the general picture, they agreed to each other that it's Timur Pishtim are the exclusive materials, the most prominent materials that make a beged for Kabbalah's Tumah. However, Rabbi says that there is some point of contention between them. According to Tana Rabbi Shmuel, only a beged which is exclusively made from tzemer pishtim can become tamid. That's a blanket statement. According to Shimon Elazar, there's some leeway here. There's some exception, which is if the beged is a large size material, a material which has 3 tfachim length by 3 tfachim width, it is shloish al shlosh tfachim. That is a large size material. In this case, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar will disagree with Tana Rabbi Shmuel. He will hold that even if it is made of other types of materials, it will become tamei if it touches a sheretz. And perhaps the reason is that the quantity, the size, will make up for the inferior quality material. Since it has a cheshivas on account of its size, it's a full-size piece of material, full-size beged. So regardless of what the material is, it can become tamei when it touches the sheretz. So, at this point in the Gemara, regarding tumas negoim, that's exclusive to tzemer pishtim. Regarding tumas shratzim, for a beged to become tamei when it touches the sheretz, according to Abaye, Tana Rabbi Shmuel and Shimon Elazar both agree that it is only exclusively regarding a beged of tzemer pishtim. According to Rabbi, Shimon Elazar will disagree regarding a large size beged. He holds that a beged shloisha al shloisha can become tamei when it touches the sheretz, even if it is not made of a tzemer pishtim. Continues the Gemara, let's find the source for this concept. Once again, with 4 lines from the bottom, Chavav Amud Beis, U'lerava de Omar, Shloish al Shloish Bishar B'Godim Ikebinayu. He holds that the point of contention between these Tanoim is regarding a large size material that contains 3 by 3 tfachim, and even if it is from other fibers other than Tzemer Pishtim, according to Rav Shimon bar Elazar, Isle, he hold that is a beged and can become tummy when it touches the sheretz. However, Latana Dvei Rishmoil Lesle, he holds that it's not a beged. Says Gemara, what is the source for this tumah? How do we know? What is the marker, the source for this halacha that if a large size material of shloisha tfachim is made of other fibers, it can become tummy when it touches the sheretz? Minole, how do we know this? It says Gemara Nafka, we learned it from an extra word, me'oi beged. The word oi in the pasuk of Tumas Shrotzim, when the Torah describes a beged becoming tummy when it comes to contact with a sheretz, the Torah adds the words oi, and that is coming to be married to include a beged which is comprised of other types of materials. Continues the word Desanya, and Rashi deletes the word Desanya. He holds that it was merely Rabbi speaking here to find a source for this halacha. Tosfos disagrees. Tosfos says this is a brayso brought later on the Gemara. In any case, the Gemara continues and says as follows: beged. So if the Torah would simply say beged, which can become tamei when it touches the sheretz, ain't a beged. So I would only know that a true, bona fide, legitimate, high quality, high status beged made of tzemer pishtim, that can become tamei when it touches the sheretz. However, shloisha b'shar b'gadim einayin, how do we know that even if it's made of other fibers and it's a large size material, 3 by 3 tefachim, it can become tamei when it touches the sheretz? Tamar loima oi. That's why the pasuk adds the word oi, which is a ribui, to include even this type of scenario. So this is Rav's source for this halacha. However, Abaye, who disagrees with this, Abaye holds that according to Tana Dev Shmuel and the Shimon bar Elazar, there's no allowance for other fibers to become tamei, even from his sheretz. So what is he going to do with the word oi? Va'abaye, hi, oi, beged, my yavedle. What is he going to use this word for? What is he going to be derish from this word? And says the Gemara, he needs it for a different thing. Le rabbis, sholish al sholish, bet semer pishtim, to metame b'shrotzim. Abaye says as follows: the pasuk, had it only have said beged, I would suppose was speaking about a large size beged, a prominent beged, a beged choshev. How do we know that even a small size material, only a small patch of 3 etzbais by 3 etzbais, which is of tzemer pishtim, of course, how do we know that too can become tamei when it touches the sheretz? That's why the pasuk needs to add the word oi to include even that case. So according to Abaye, the Torah is not coming to include other fibers, other materials, other than tzemer pishtim, wool and linen. The Torah is merely speaking about tzemer pishtim, because that is the only type of fiber that can become tamei even if it touches the sheretz. Therefore, when the Torah is coming to add something, it's not coming to add with regard to a different type of fiber, but rather regarding the size, the dimension of the material. Even if it's a small size material, even if it can only be used as a patch for a poor man's clothing, it can become tamei with a sheretz. But again, provided that it is made of tzemer pishtim. Okay, so the word oi is coming to be marved to include something, according to Rava, coming to include a large size material which consists of other than tzemer pishtim, according to Abaye, a small size patch of tzemer pishtim. Says the Rava, if so, how's Rava going to know this halacha? That even a small patch of tzemer pishtim can become tamei if it touches the sheretz. Says the more simple, Gali Rachman Negabe Negoim, Vadin L'Shrotzim. The Torah has already stipulated this halacha regarding Tumas Negoim, as we learned yesterday, that the pasuk says V'ha beged, which is a ribui, and that is coming to include even a small patch of tzemer pishtim that can become tamei if a nega is found on it. If so, says Rav, the Torah reveals to us this concept by negoim. We're going to carry it over to shrotzim as well. Why should we differentiate between the two? So we know already that even a small patch can become tamei, whether from a nega, whether from shrotzim. There's no need for the Torah to come teach us that specifically here. And if so, the pasuk va'oi, the word va'oi, is an extra word. Evidently, it's coming to include even other materials. Counters Abaye, va'abaye ikil mifrach. You can't bring it over from the goyim. There's a way to differentiate between the two. We know that the Tumas Negoim has an exclusive element that even shesi ve'erev, even mere threads which are prepared, which are spun for the weaving. So the shesi is the threads that are meant to go horizontal. Erev, the ones that go shesi, is the one that goes vertical. Erev is the one that goes horizontal. And even threads can be makabel tumas negoyim. So this is a stringency. This is a chumrah exclusive to negoyim. If so, perhaps we can't derive anything from there. You can't say, well, if the Torah tells us that a small patch can become tummy with a nega, we're going to carry that concept over to tumas shrotzim as well. Never. We can't compare the two. Perhaps negoyim are more stringent. Again, says the Gemara, Abai ikil mifrach, mala negoyim. Yes, we find this concept of a patch becoming tummy by negoyim, but that's because it's more chomer shekain shesi ve'erev metame behem. However, shrotzim don't have that chumrah. Therefore, we can't derive one from the other. We need a specific word, a specific pasuk, to teach us that even a small patch can become tamei from tumas shrotzim. So the word oy indeed is needed for this, and can be used to include other materials. V'idach, and Rava responds as follows: So you maintain that negoyim are more stringent. If that is the reason why the Torah needs to teach us the halacha here as well, because we can't learn it from negoyim, okay, I have another option. I have another solution. Why didn't the Torah say it over here, where shrotzim, which is more lenient, more kal, right? According to your argument that shrotzim is more lenient, so why didn't the Torah state it by shrotzim, and we're going to derive it over to, we're going to learn negoyim, which is more stringent, from shrotzim? Why does the Torah need to cite this halacha 2 times? According to your way of thinking, the Torah should have merely stated it once by shrotzim, taught us that even a small patch can become tamei through a sheretz, which is very lenient tumah compared to negoyim. Surely negoyim, the tumas negoyim, which is more stringent, will apply even to a patch. So why did the Torah have to say it twice? Apparently, the point of the Torah here is not to teach us the halach of the patch by shrotzim. The fact that the Torah teaches it and stipulates it by negoyim, the Torah is revealing to us that even a small patch of a 3x3 etzbais dimension has a din, constitutes a shem beged, and therefore we can apply it elsewhere, everywhere. Even by negoyim, which is more stringent, the Torah is merely teaching us a concept, not really a halacha, a specific halacha of tumas negoyim. The Torah is telling us even a small patch has a status of a beged. If so, what difference does it make whether it's tumas negoyim or tumas shrotzim? So we apply that principle elsewhere as well. So the word oy by tumas shrotzim is indeed superfluous, and indeed is coming to teach us that even other materials other than wool or linen can become tamei, provided it is a large size material of 3 tfachim by 3 tfachim. It is a prominent beged, therefore it makes up for the inferior material contained therein. Says the Gemara v'idach. Abai responds to this as follows: so you're proposing that the Torah should have merely said the halacha by negoyim, by shrotzim, and negoyim, which is more stringent, can be learned from there? Says the Gemara v'idach. Abai will counter to this and say as follows: negoyim is shrotzim lo yasu. You can't propose that the Torah should have merely stated the halacha of a patch by shrotzim, and negoyim, which is more stringent, can certainly be derived from there. Because we can present a distinction in this direction as well. How? Because we can refute that by saying that shrotzim has a chumrah over negoyim as well. Not only does negoyim have a chumrah because it's metame shasi ve'erev, shrotzim has an advantage over negoyim as well. What is the advantage? Because shrotzim are metame even if the sheretz, if they only have a small piece of a ka'adasha, if it's a sheretz the size of a lentil, it can still be metame, which is a more chumrah, which is a greater chumrah, more stringent than negoyim. The shear of a nega is kigris, which the Mepharshim say has a shear, an area of 9 lentils. So it's 9 times the size of the tumas hadasha. So apparently shrotzim has a chumrah, a great chumrah over negoyim. If so, says Abaye, we can't derive one for the other. Once again, if the Torah would say the halacha of a patch by shrotzim, we couldn't learn the gun from there, because shrotzim is more chomer, because the shear of Tumas shrotzim is even ka'adasha, even if it's merely the size of a lentil. On the other hand, if the Torah would say the halacha of a patch by negoim, you couldn't learn shrotzim from there either. Why? Because negoim have a chomer that it is metame, even merely threads, shasi v'erev. If so, the Torah needed to stipulate this halacha of a patch in both locations, in Tumas negoim and in shrotzim as well. And if so, there's no extra words here. The word oi is meant to teach us the halacha of a patch, of a small size material by Tumas shrotzim, and it's not extra. According to Rabbi, however, it is extra. As we explained, according to the words of Tosfos, that since the Torah tells us this halacha, teaches us this concept by negoim, it's merely a revelation, it's a gilim milsa, to reveal to us the concept, the definition of beged. Even a small patch constitutes a shem beged. With regard to tumah, regardless of what type of tumah, we could apply this concept to tumas negoim, to tumas shrotzim. If so, there was no need for the Torah to specifically teach us this concept by shrotzim. If so, this leaves us with an extra word of oi. And apparently this is coming to include, says Rava, even other materials, if it is shloisha tvachim. So, let's make a short summary of the Gemara up until this point. So, regarding the tumah of shrotzim, we know that a shesi ve'erev, threads, will not become tummy when touching a sheretz. This is agreed upon all, Abaye and Rava. What about a small patch, a patch which is 3 by 3 etzbois of tzemer upishtim? Could that become tummy through a sheretz? Certainly. The question is where that is derived from. According to Abaye, from the word oi, it's an extra word to include even a small patch. According to Rava, it is simply derived from the fact that the Torah revealed this concept by negoim, and that is carried over to shrotzim as well. What about other materials? Can they become tummy through a sheretz? According to Abaye, nothing doing. Certainly not. There's no allowance at all. According to Rava, if we're speaking about large size material of shleishal tvachim, it can become tummy even if it consists of other fibers other than tzemer pishtim. It can become tummy through touching a sheretz, and that is derived from the word oi, which is coming to include that as well. And this is the shita of Rav Shimon Lazar, who tells us that when it is a large size material of shleishal tvachim, it will become tummy through a sheretz, even if it's not tzemer or pishtim. However, according to Abaye, Rav Shimon Lazar and Tony de Rishma both agree that there is no tumah by other materials of non-tzemer pishtim. Now we must stress that again, this is only regarding tumas shrotzim. All agree that regarding tumas negoim, this is certainly restricted to begadim that contain only tzemer or pishtim, because we have a pasuk that stipulates the halacha very clearly that only tzemer pishtim are tummy through negoim. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rabbi, Hai Tana Dvei Rishmal. So we had one Tana from the Beis Medrash of Rishmal who taught us that a beged may only consist of tzemer pishtim. To have a din of a beged, to become tamei. Says Abaye, we have a seeming contradiction between two Tanaim who taught differently. They were both from the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shmuel, and they both taught the halacha differently. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Hai Tana Dvei Rishmal. This first Tana, Dvei Rishmal, mapik, he discards, he preempts, he disputes. He's diametrically opposed to another Tana from the same Beis Medrash. Mapek mi'idach, from the other Tana Dvei Rishmal. The Tana Dvei Rishmal, we have a second brisa from another Tana from the Beis Medrash of Rishmal as follows. Beged, so the Torah tells us that a beged can become tamei if it touches a sheretz. Ainli ela beged tzemer pishtim. So that's only regarding a beged that contains tzemer pishtim, as we know from the goyim. What about other materials? Minayin l'Rabbi tzemer gmalim. What about a beged that contains wool of camels? V'tzemer novim, rabbit hair. Noitzeshal izim, the hair from the goats. V'asherayim, v'akolaf, v'asrikim. All types of silk. How do you know that they too can become tamei if this beged touches a sheret? Talmud loymar oy beged. So the word oy is extra, coming to include other materials. Says Abaye, this Tana is being chaylek, disputes, is diametrically opposed to the first Tana, the Rishmal. Because according to the first Tana Rabbi Shmuel, only a beged of Tzemer Pishtim will become tamei when it touches a sheretz. According to this Tana Rabbi Shmuel, any material suitable, a beged which is produced from any type of fiber, whether the camel's wool, the rabbit hair, silk, any type of material, will become tamei when it touches a sheretz. So you have a machlekes between both tanoim. Says the Gemara, perhaps we can have a different approach to reconcile between them. Rava Amar, no, let's make peace. Ki lesle lahach tana, Rabbi Shmuel. Let's reinterpret the first Tana. The first Tana who told us that a beged is only if it is exclusively made from Tzemer Pishtim, and otherwise it is not considered to be a beged with regard to Tumah. Ki lesle lahach tana Rabbi Shmuel, b'shar b'gadim. He holds that other types of b'gadim are not a beged. That's only when it's a small patch, sholish al sholish. So it's a small, insignificant piece of material. If so, it needs to at least have been made, produced from prominent type of material, Tzemer Pishtim. But if it's a large piece of material, large piece of fabric, or shleisha al shleisha, Islay. Even according to the first Tana, that is considered to be a beged, even if it's made of other fibers. If so, says Rava, we can reconcile between both Tanoim. The first Tana Rabbi Shmuel and the second Tana Rabbi Shmuel, both saying the same thing. They both hold that if it's Tzemer Pishtim, then it can become tamei from a sheretz, regardless of its size. But if it's other fibers, other materials, then it depends. If it's merely a small patch, an insignificant portion of material, then indeed it needs to be from Tzemer Pishtim, which are prominent fibers, prominent type of materials. If the beged is a large size beged, if it's a material which has a size of 3 tfachim by 3 tfachim, that is a chashav piece of material. That is a true beged. And if so, it can consist of any type of fiber, even other than Tzemer Pishtim, and it will become tamei if it touches the sheretz. So that's Rabbi's approach to reconcile these two Tanoim. Says in 1 second. This doesn't fit with Rabbi's statement earlier. Didn't Rabbi already tell us? Shloisha al shloisha b'shar b'gadim is the point of contention between Rav Shimon Elazar and Tana Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi, if you recall, we began today's blot by telling us that Rabbi explained to us that Rav Shimon Elazar is the one who subscribes to this opinion. He holds that a large piece of material of shloisha tfachim will become tamei through a sheretz, even if it consists of fibers other than Tzemer Pishtim. This is the Shita of Shimon Elazar. How do we know that? Because Shimon Elazar stated this halacha down on Chavav on the base on the bottom by using the term sholish al sholish, that if a small patch is made of other fibers other than Tzemer Pishtim, it can become tamei. Says Rava, if so, this is restricted to a small patch. This halacha is strictly when it's a small piece of material, but if it's a large size material, according to Shimon Elazar, it will become tamei from a sheretz, even if it's produced of other materials, other than Tzemer Pishtim. This is his shita. However, this is the point of contention between him and Tana Rabbi Shmuel. Tana Rabbi Shmuel holds that a beged is never mekabel tumah unless it is Tzemer Pishtim. If so, how is this consistent? How is this in line with what we just heard in the name of Rava? Rava just told us that both Tanaim from the Beis Medrash Rabbi Shmuel hold that if it's a large piece of material, it will become tamei from a sheretz, even if it's not Tzemer Pishtim. This seems to be a contradiction. Says the Gemara, V'Rava de'amar, Rava himself was the one who told us that shloisha al shloisha b'shar b'gadim, a large size of material made of other fibers other than Tzemer Pishtim, is the point of contention between Shimon Elazar and Tana Rabbi Shmuel. L'Rab Shimon Elazar Islay, he holds that it's a beged. However, l'Tana Rabbi Shmuel Leslay, he holds it's not a beged. And here Rava tells us that according to Tana Rabbi Shmuel, it is a beged if it's a large piece of material. Says Rava Mahi, indeed Rava retracted from that earlier interpretation, and we meant to follow this latest interpretation of Rava, that even according to Tana Rabbi Shmuel, if it's a large piece of material, it can become tamei from a sheretz, even if it's non-tzemer pishtim. And indeed, the Mefarshim and Rishonim explained that Rabbi was trying to reconcile between the both Tanaim of the Beis Medrash Rabbi Shmuel. Perhaps the reason is because you can say the reason is because we assume that they heard the halacha from the same Rabbi. So it makes sense that they are both saying the same thing. So rather than present them as two diametrically opposed shittas, Rava proposed to join them and put them both on the same page, that they both hold that if it's a large size of material, it will become tamei through a sheretz, even if it's not on tzemer pishtim. The discussion of tzemer pishtim is only with regard to a small patch, a shalish al shalish, a tiny piece of material. That indeed cannot become tamei from a sheretz when it is non-tzemer pishtim. And certainly, as we said earlier regarding the goyim, it is exclusive for tzemer pishtim. The Gemara proposed an alternative here. Harav Papama, this attempt to reconcile between the two Tanaim was actually not Rava, because Rava will not be consistent with his earlier statement. It was actually Rav Papa. Rav Papa meant to join the two Tanaim together by giving the following explanation. It says Rav Papa Amar, Rav Papa Amar, Af Kollel Lasui Kalayim. Rav Papa explains as follows. So we have the second Tana from the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shmuel, who tells us that any type of beged, any sort of fiber will become tamei through a sheretz. This is very clear. He learns from the pasuk of Oi, it's coming to include anything. Says Rav Papa, this is exactly the same shita as the first Tana, Dvei Rabbi Shmuel. Now, the first Tana, Dvei Rabbi Shmuel, told us that just as we find by Negoim, a beged is only if it consists of tzemer pishtim. Af koil, these are the words up on Chavav and Beis, 6 lines from the top. We derive from a binyan av, from the goyim, that af koil. So too, everything, meaning wherever else it says beged, it is only tzemer pishtim. That's how we learned, that's how we interpreted, that's how we presented his opinion until now. Says Rav Papa, no. Af koil, this comparison of af koil, we're comparing everything to Negoim, and we require strictly tzemer pishtim. It's not referring to tumah. A beged can become tamei from a sheretz even if it's not tzemer pishtim. What then is he referring to when he says af koil? He's coming to compare this concept. He's going to apply this concept to where? To kalayim. That just as we find that tzemer pishtim are unique to Negoim, kalayim is uniquely a mixture of tzemer pishtim and no other type of materials. He's not discussing tumas begadim. Certainly he agrees that regarding tumas begadim, a beged doesn't need to consist of tzemer pishtim. It can be made of any type of fiber, just as the second Tana of Rabbi Shmuel stated clearly. So there's no machlokes between them, not discussing the same topic. He's discussing tumas begadim. The first time he's discussing kalayim. Once again inside, Rav Papa Amar, Af koil asui kalayim. Says in 1 second. We need a drasha that kalayim is only a mixture of wool and linen. It's a pasuk, it's a beferish pasuk. Torah clearly tells us that kalayim is only a mixture of wool and linen. Kalayim be'edik sivbei. Silba shatnez. Don't wear this mixture of tzemer pishtim yachtav. So there's no need for a drasha. How can you say that the first time Rabbi Shmuel is coming to teach us something regarding kalayim, that it's only by tzemer pishtim? There's a pasuk which clearly stipulates that kalayim is only tzemer pishtim. Says more Salka. Perhaps I would think the pasuk which restricts, which limits the halacha of shatnez to tzemer pishtim, that's only regarding a certain form, a certain manner of kalayim. Derech levisha, if he actually wears the garment of kalayim, then it needs to be tzemer pishtim. But if he merely covers himself with kalayim, which that is also an isser, perhaps over there, I think it's different. Kol treimini aser. Any mixture of two types of fiber will be aser, and therefore the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel needs to teach us that is not so. That just as we find that tzemer pishtim is exclusive for Negoim, it is also exclusive for kalayim, any form of kalayim, even covering oneself with kalayim. So as how can you even propose that ha'alas kalayim, covering oneself with kalayim, is, even if it contains other forms of material, other forms of mixtures, non-tzemer pishtim mixture? Isn't it a kavachomer? Uma levisha. If you say that wearing That his whole entire body benefits, enjoys the garment that he's wearing. He's wrapping himself with his garment of kalayim. Nevertheless, although it's a greater form of hana, Amris, you've told me, tzemer pishtim in, it only applies to wool and linen, but not other types of fibers, as stated clearly in the pasuk. So how can you even suggest, how can you even fathom that ha'ala would be different than merely covering oneself, which is a very minimal hana, a low form of pleasure from this beged? Certainly over there, it is only if it is a mixture of tzemer pishtim. Ha'ala, like kolshkin, certainly ha'ala, which is a lower form of hana, of course. How can you say it's more stringent than levisha? Certainly, of course, it would only apply to a mixture of tzemer pishtim. If so, there's no need for Tandir Shmuel to teach us anything in that regard. You can't even propose that the Tana is discussing kalayim and coming to teach us that kalayim is strictly if it's a mixture of wool and linen. We have a pasuk that already teaches that. Ella says the more rather of Papa Badusi, it's unreliable. We can't rely on this interpretation of Papa, and in fact, that is not what the Tana was coming to teach us. Continues Gemara, another proposal. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar. He's coming again to explain the apparent contradiction between both Tanaim from the Beis Medrash or Rishmoel. So again, we have the second Tana on Chav Zayin and Aleph, which taught us that a beged can become tummy through a sheretz even if it contains fibers other than tzemer pishtim. We have the first Tana on Chavav and Beis, who seems to oppose that, who says that a beged must strictly be made from tzemer pishtim to become tummy. Says Rav Nachman Yitzchak, once again, we've interpreted the first Tana wrongly. He's not discussing tumas begadim. When he uses the word af koil, just as we find tzemer pishtim exclusive to Negoim, af koil, so too elsewhere, it needs to be tzemer pishtim. He's not talking about tumas begadim. He agrees to the second Tana, tumas begadim is regardless of its type of fiber, but rather he's discussing tzitzis. Af koil asuyit tzitzis. He's coming to teach us halacha with regard to tzitzis, that only a tzemer, which consists of tzemer pishtim, those prominent materials, are chayiv, obligated in tzitzis, but no other materials. Let's just take a quick break at this point before we proceed elaborating on this concept of tzitzis. Let's just make a quick list here of the various approaches in the Gemara up until now. So again, briefly, we have two Tanoim from the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shmuel. We have Tana number one, who tells us that a beged will only be becoming tumah if it is made of tzemer pishtim. He compares it to Negoim. We have the second Tana, which we learned today, who tells us that regarding tumah shratzim, a beged indeed will become tummy from a sheretz, regardless of the type of material. How do we reconcile these apparently diametrically opposed Tanoim? So we have four approaches. Abaye says, indeed, it's a machlokes. One Tana is discarding of the other Tana. It is a very big machlokes. According to the first Tana, a beged will only become tamei if it is tzemer pishtim. According to the second Tana, even other begadim can become tamei from a sheretz. So it's a machlokes. He doesn't attempt to reconcile. Rabbi says, yes, let's reconcile between both Tanoim. They're both coming from the same Beis Medrash. Let's figure a way out. Says Rabbi, indeed, there is no machlokes. They both concur. They're both on the same exact page. They both hold that a large piece of material of shloish tfachim will become tamei even if it contains other fibers. So that is what the second Tana was coming to teach us. If it's a large size material, it will become tamei by shar begadim, by other materials. So even if it's not tzemer pishtim, if it touches a sheretz, it will become tamei. And indeed, the first Tana agrees with that. There's no machlokes. Rav Papa proposed that the first Tana wasn't even speaking about tumas begadim. He was speaking about kalayim. The Gemara negated that, and the Gemara proceeded finally from Nachman Yitzchak's approach, that he proposed as follows. Indeed, the second Tana teaches us a chiddush that even shar begadim, other fibers, can become tamei through a sheretz. The first Tana wasn't even discussing tumas begadim. He was discussing tzitzis. He agrees with the concept taught by the second Tana, that regarding tumas begadim, even other fibers can become tummy through a sheretz. He's discussing tzitzis. He's telling us, just as we find that tzemer pishtim is exclusive to tumas negayim, so too regarding tzitzis, only a beged, which is produced by either wool or linen, which are those prominent fibers, only this beged will require tzitzis. Continues the Gemara, tzitzis. So you maintain that the Tana Devi Shmuel, is teaching us halacha regarding tzitzis, and he's deriving it from the Goyim. Tzitzis behediksiv. We already know that halacha from a different pasuk, from elsewhere. What is that pasuk? Loisil b'shatnez, may not wear a mixture of tzemer pishtim, of wool and linen, uksiv, and then immediately afterwards the Torah tells us the halacha of tzitzis. Gdilim taselcha, you meant to make fringes and strings on the corners of your begadim. So the Torah is teaching us that we're meant to learn one from the other. This is the drasha of smuchim, the fact that the Torah places two items next to each other as an indication that we're meant to derive one from the other, and we're meant to learn that the chiyuv of tzitzis only applies to a beged of tzemer pishtim, just as the concept of kalayim is only applicable to tzemer pishtim. So why do we need another source for the same halacha from the guy? We already know it from this drasha. Says the Gemara, this is not sufficient. This pasuk alone wouldn't really be a clear proof. Why? Perhaps I could interpret this pasuk as Rabbi did. He did it very differently. Says the Gemara, the Rabbi asked a contradiction, a stira between two psukim. Ksiv hakanaf min kanaf. The Torah tells us that tzitzis are meant to be placed on the corner. The pasuk says, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amart aleim v'oslam tzitzis al kanfe bigdeim, on the corners of their garments. So the Torah tells us the location of the tzitzis on the corners. The Torah continues and says, "V'nosnu al tzitzis hakanaf psil tcheles." So why this repetition? Why did the Torah need to repeat again, "V'nosnu al tzitzis hakanaf," on the corners? We already know it's on the corner. Apparently, this is an extra pasuk to teach us a halach. Hakanaf, says the Gemara, min kanaf, is coming to teach us that the actual strings of tzitzis are meant to be the same type of material as the garment. So that's one pasuk. Uksiv, and we have another pasuk. The pasuk that we just mentioned, tzemer pishtim yachtav. The pasuk tells us that just as kalayim is wool and linen, tzitzis is meant to be made from wool and linen. So we see here that the strings of the tzitzis can only be from tzemer pishtim. We have a contradiction. Is it wool and linen exclusively, or can it be made from other minim as long as it matches the garment? Haketzat. How are we going to explain this? Says the Gemara, indeed, any type of tzitzis are suitable, any types of strings. And for sure, any type of garment is chayav and tzitzis. But what then is the difference between strings of tzemer pishtim and strings of other fibers? Haketzat tzemer pishtim poitrin, they can be applied and they could exempt, meaning they can be hung up onto the corners of any type of garment, bein b'minan, whether they match the material, whether the garment is made of the tzemer and the pishtim just as they, or bein shaloi b'minan, even if they're placed on garments which are made of other types of materials. Tzemer and pishtim have a multifaceted talent. They're universal. They can be applied to any type of garment. Shar minin, but other types of tzitzis made of other types of fibers, non-tzemer pishtim fibers, be'minam paitrim. Indeed, they can be hung up onto a beged of their min, as long as they match the min of the beged. Shaloi b'minan ein paitrim. They cannot be applied to a beged that does not match them. They're made of a different fiber than these tzitzis. So that's how he reconciles these two psukim. The pasuk tells us that the tzitzis is meant to be min kanaf, match the material that is regarding tzitzis that are non-tzemer pishtim, and they are limited in their ability. However, tzemer pishtim, that's the other pasuk, which seems to single out wool and linen. It's coming to teach us that wool and linen have an exceptional power. They can be applied to any sort of beged, even if they don't match the tzitzis. If so, it's very clear that any beged, even if it's non-tzemer pishtim, is chayav and tzitzis. If so, perhaps I would think that the proper interpretation of this pasuk of Leisil B'Shatnis Tzemer Pishtim and followed by Gdilim Tasalcha, that must be interpreted like Rava. It's simply teaching us halacha regarding the ability of the tzitzis of Tzemar Pishtim. They're multifaceted, they can be applied to any sort of beged, but it's nothing to do with regarding the obligation of the beged itself. The beged doesn't need to be Tzemar Pishtim, any sort of material is chayav and tzitzis. Perhaps I would think to interpret the pasuk in that manner. Kamash Malon. That's why the Tana de Rishmo needs to teach us, no, that's not the case. We learn from the Goyim that exclusively Tzemar Pishtim constitute the Shem Beged. Only a Beged of Tzemar Pishtim is chayav and tzitzis and nothing else. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Acha bar Rava. So he went ahead and he asked the Kasha Rav Ashi. Let's analyze the opinion of Tana de Rishmo. So at this point in the Gemara, according to the final approach of Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak, who came to reconcile between both Tanaim of the Beis Medrash Rabbi Shmuel, and he told us that all agree that regarding Tumas Begadim, any material suitable, it is only regarding Tzitzis that the first Tana came to inform us that the Chiv is exclusive to a Beged of Tzemar Pishtim. Says, well, what is the difference between the two? Why, regarding Tumas Begadim, do you say, well, any fiber is suitable? And that, of course, is learned from the word of Oy, the extra word of Oy Beged, which is coming to include any sort of material. And regarding Tzitzis, you limit it only to Tzemar Pishtim. The term, the definition of Beged in the context of Tzitzis is strictly Tzemar Pishtim. Why? Why that difference? Let's see again. Amar Rav Acha bar Rav Ashi. The Tana de Rishmo. Ma'ishna l'inyan Tumah. Why is it that by Tumah, the Mar b'Shav Begadim? What is the difference? Why by Tumah does it include all types of materials? T'chsev Beged, which is come to include everything. Hachanami, here too by Tzitzis, we will find a pasuk which is coming to be marba to include. Let's include other fibers as well regarding Tzitzis. Lema l'Rabbi Sharb Begadim Mashar Techasaba. This seems to be an extra pasuk that a beged which has 4 corners is chayav and tzitzis, and the Torah adds a couple of words. Ashar techasaba. It's a beged that you'll cover yourself with. So apparently it's an extra, it's redundant, it's superfluous words. So the Torah is coming to marb to include something. Let's propose that the Torah is coming to marb, other material, other fibers. Says the Gemara, who? Those words Ashar techasaba indeed are coming to be marb, but it's coming to be marb something else. And it cannot be used to teach us that other fibers are chayav and tzitzis. What din is it coming to include? It's coming to include the ksus, a garment of a blind man. Why would I think that it's pater? The Sani, as we learned in the Brayso, Re'isam oisai, who meant to see the tzitzis, prat ksus laila, it's coming to exclude a nighttime garment. Because it's dark at night, you can't see. The Torah is going to exempt a ksus laila from tzitzis. So you say the Torah is going to exempt a ksus laila, a nighttime garment. Or perhaps the Torah is going to exclude something else, to exempt ella pradik suma. It's going to exclude the ksus, the garment of a suma, blind man, since he can't see, so he's not included in the Risa Moisai. Sadly, to go this way and exempt a ksus laila, since it's dark. Go the other way, exempt a ksus suma, because he can't see, and be machayiv, obligate a ksus laila. Says when the pasuk uses an inclusive term, come to marbe something with the word ashar techasaba, har ksus suma amar. Apparently, it's come to include the ksus, the garment of a blind man. Hani mekayim risam oisai. How am I going to establish the words risam oisai? Pradik ksus laila. Evidently, it's come to exclude a ksus laila, a nighttime garment. So we have 2 psukim. One pasuk, an inclusive pasuk, ashar techasaba, coming to be marbe something. The other pasuk, urisam oisei, is coming to exempt, to exclude something. Says the Gemara, the miyut, the exclusion, is applied to ksus laila. The inclusion, the riboy, is for ksus suma. Says the Gemara, how do you know to opt this direction rather than the other direction? My royis, why did you choose l'rabbi's suma, loitzik ksus laila? Where did you see this? Where did you see that we're meant to be marbe, the blind man's garment, and to exempt the ksus laila? Perhaps in the reverse. Be marbe ksus laila and be mamai the ksus suma. Says Gemara, this is the preferred approach. It's logical. Marban iksus summa. It is logical to include a garment of a blind man. Others can see him. Since it's the middle of the day and it's light, other people can see the tzitzis. Other people can see this garment. So although he personally can't see it, but it's visible. Therefore, it's logical to say that Torah is coming to include this. If it's coming to include something, it's coming to include this. However, it's logical that Torah is coming to exclude the nighttime garment because nobody can see it. It's not visible. So this is the preferred approach. The Torah is coming to you marba and coming to you might to include and exclude. Apparently, it's coming to include the iksus of summa since it is middle of the day and it's visible, and coming to exclude and exempt the iksus laila nighttime garment since it's not visible and is not included in the term of Isam Oisab. Says the Gemara, Ve'ema, but 1 second. We have a riboy of Ashat HaChasaba. How do you know to apply that riboy to a summa? Perhaps it's coming to include other fibers, other materials. Non-Temer Pishtim. Ve'ema l'Rabbi Sharp Godim. Says the Gemara, it's not logical. The Svara tells us that the riboy is not meant to be applied to other materials. Why? Mistavra koi b'tzemer pishtim, ma b'tzemer pishtim. Since the parsha of tzitzis is discussing tzemer pishtim, that is the point of departure of the parsha. That is the basic assumption that tzitzis must be from tzemer pishtim. Why? As we mentioned earlier, since the pasuk states the mitzvah of tzitzis next to the pasuk of shatnes, the silba shatnes, semer pishtim, and then proceeds with dilum tasalach. So the basic understanding is that tzitzis needs to be from semer pishtim. So it's not logical to say that the Torah is going to be marba a non-semer pishtim item. The first assumption is that the Torah, when it's come to be marba something, the Torah which discusses semer pishtim and is marba something into that, is coming to include a tzemer pishtim in a different context. For instance, a beged of tzemer pishtim that belongs to a summa. But it's not logical to say that the Torah is coming to be marba a non-tzemer pishtim. Says in one inside, Mistavra. It is logical to say kayib tzemer pishtim when the Torah is discussing tzemer pishtim and it's come to include something. It will include marba tzemer pishtim. It will include a different form. A different format of tzemer pishtim, for instance, a tzemer pishtim that belongs to a summa. But to say that kayib tzemer pishtim, marba shar begadim, to say that when the Torah is discussing tzemer pishtim, it's coming to include other fibers, other materials, that is not logical. Therefore, we prefer to apply the riba of the Torah to a summa, and indeed a blind man garment is chayiv, but not to include a garment from other fibers. So in summary, regarding the halacha of tzitzis, what about a beged, which consists of other materials, non-temer pishtim? According to Rabbi, certainly it's chayiv. According to the Tana de Shmuel, as we just interpreted according to the view of Rav Nachman Yitzchak, the Tana de Shmuel is ruling it out. Tzitzis is exclusive by tzemer pishtim. And this is derived from the binyan av, from the goyim. What about a ksus laila, a nighttime garment that is pater from tzitzis, as the pasuk tells us, a risa moisa, you went to see it. What about a ksus summa, a garment that belongs to a blind man that is chayiv in tzitzis and is included in this rabbi from the pasuk v'asher techasaba. Now we discussed a ksus laila, a nighttime garment. What is the definition of a nighttime garment? It's actually a triple machlokes rishonim in this regard. According to the Rambam, any garment worn at night is pater. According to the Rosh, it needs to be exclusively designated for nighttime use. According to the Ran, he adopts both approaches. A garment which is actually being worn now at night is pater, and even a garment which is worn by day, but if it's exclusively designated as a nighttime garment, that is considered to be a ksus laila, and is pater from tzitzis. Continues the Gemara, Amar Abai. So once again, Abai pierced together some shitas. This apparently was his custom, to group together different shitas. Amar Abaye, Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So this Tana, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, let's perhaps quickly flip back to Chav Vav Amar Aleph. Again, that brisa, 3 lines from the bottom. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Omer, Kollel Yotzei min ha'etz, anything that comes from a tree, Eima b'shem shalosh al shalosh, cannot become tummy from tumas begadim. Umasachim by, since it is not makabel tumah, you can use zeschach, chutzui pishtan, except for the wood of pishtan, the flax stalks, which are makabel tumah. The Gemara here will expound on that, and the reason why the brisa uses the words kol yitim and eitz, although really the halacha of tumas begadim is applicable to any fibers, as the Gemara later goes on to proceed and explain. But the brisa used the word eitz. It's coming to teach us a chiddush with regard to schach. That even a certain form of eitz, of a branch, like a pishtan, like the stalks of pishtan, and even though they're not processed yet, as we will explain soon in the Gemara, they're not fully processed. Nevertheless, they can become tamei, tumas negayim, and therefore unsuitable to be used as schach. Therefore, the brisa used the word kol yitzim and eitz. Anything that comes from a tree to indicate the pishtan, which is considered to be eitz as well. So back over to our Gemara. Once again says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So this opinion of Shimon ben Elazar, who tells us that even the pishtan, the eitz, the bundles of flax can become tamei through a nega, and therefore it's unsuitable as schach for sukkah. So this opinion, v'sumchas, and also the opinion of sumchas. So both these Tanaim, Shimon ben Elazar and sumchas, Amar Davar Echad, they both say the same thing. That what? That even something which can become tamei merely through tumas negoim, so only has a very limited tumah, something which only tumas negoim applies to, is considered to be a davar makabel tumah and can be used for schach. Even though it can become tamei with other tumas, the fact that it can get tumas negoim, that is sufficient to make it unsuitable for schach. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, that's the Reb Shimon ben Elazar that we just said. Sumchas. Where do we find that? The Sanya. Sumchas Omer. Sicha b'tevi. If he used spun threads, psula, he can use that as schach. Because it becomes tummy through a nega, as we learned earlier, that shesi ve'erev, merely threads, can become tummy with tumas negoim. Says the Gemara, Keman, Sumchas is following whose shita? This will be the shita of Rabbi Yehuda contained in the following Mishnah, who also maintains this concept that once something has arrived at the status, at the point that it becomes tummy through a nega, is unsuitable for schach. Keman ki haitana, this not as we learned. Shesi ve'erev, these threads, these wool threads of shesi ve'erev, metamim negoim miyad, become tummy immediately when they are spun. Rabbi Da'imer has shesi mishayishla. So the shesi threads, which are meant for the vertical portion of the beged, that needs to be taken out of the vat where they soaked it to whiten it. But the horizontal threads, that doesn't need that process. Immediately when it's spun, it is considered to be sufficiently processed for tumas negoim. What about the bundles of flax? As soon as they get bleached in the tan or in the oven, that is considered to be sufficiently processed to be makabel tumas negoim. And so Sumchas is following this shita that merely becoming processed to the point of even partially processed is considered to be sufficiently processed for tumas negoim, and therefore these bundles of flax, as soon as they're bleached, they can become tamei tumas negoim, and threads also, as Sumchas told us, even spun threads are considered to be sufficiently processed, and they're makabel tumas negoim, and therefore unsuitable for schach. Continues the Mishnah, kol yotzim and eitz, anything that comes from a tree, cannot be used as wicks for the Ner Shabbos. They don't maintain a steady flame. There's one exception, ela pishtan, flax, that produces a successful flame. Now Rashi says, we're speaking even about cotton. Tosfos disagrees. He says cotton is very suitable, produces a very steady flame. Tosfos says that the term eitz that is indicated, that is mentioned in the Mishnah, doesn't apply to the cotton, which is not an eitz. It's merely it's seeds. It's a flimsy thing. It's a flimsy plant that's not included in the Mishnah. Okay, so machlokes in Rashi and Tosfos regarding cotton. So once again, Kol Yitzim and Eitz, anything that comes from a tree cannot be used for a wick, and Madik Ma'ila Pishtan except for flax. But Kol Yitzim and Eitz, anything that comes from a tree, Ein Matama to Masahalim, Ela Pishtan, cannot become Tami to Masahalim. So if a mace is underneath a roof made of material from a tree, so this roof is Mechubal Karka, it cannot become Tami to Masahalim, will not become Tami to require the Hazos Per Aduma, except if this roof is made of Pishtan flax material, as the Gemara will explain and elaborate on the next plot. But in any case, we see that the Mishnah refers to Pishtan as eitz. Pishtan is merely stalks. Manola on the Pishtani creates. Where do we find a source that Pishtan is called eitz? This is Rachav regarding the spies that Yeshua sent to Israel. Via Losam Hagaga, she took them up to the roof. She hid them bepishta eitz. In the flax, the pishta ha'etz. So we see that the term eitz applied to Pishtan as well. Because the flax of the stalks of the flax, they stiffen up, they become woody, so they are reminiscent of eitz. So time for a quick chazar on today's blot. So we began by discussing what type of beged can become tamei when it comes into contact with the sheretz. So if it's merely threads, shesi ve'erev, all agree it won't become tamei. If it is a small patch of material the size of 3x3 etzbois and is made of tzemer or pishtim, all agree that it will become tamei. The question is only the source. Abaye holds the source of this halacha is from the word oi, which is marbe, even a small patch. According to Rava, we simply carry it over from the halacha of Negoim. The Torah reveals to us by Tumas Negoim that even a small patch of material constitutes a beged. We will apply that to Tumas Shratzim as well. Now what about a large piece of material, 3x3 tfachim, made of material other than Tzemer Pishtim? According to Abaye, all agree, whether it's Tanvei Rishmael or Shemar Lazar, they both hold that it will not become Tamei through a sheretz. According to Rava, that is the point of contention. According to Shemar Lazar, yes, it will become Tamei from Shratzim, and that is learned from the extra word of Oi Beget. The Gemara proceeded with presenting us two Tanoim from the same base medrash. The first Tanvei Rishmael tells us that only a Beget of Tzemer Pishtim will become Tamei. The second Tana clearly tells us that any type of material, if it comes into contact with a sheretz, will become tamei. Says Abaye, indeed, this is a machlokes between the two Tanoim. Rabbi says, let's reconcile. They're both speaking about a case of shloish tfachim, a large piece of material, which will indeed become tamei from a sheretz, even if it's non-tzemer pishtim. The first time there is Shmuel, who ruled out other fibers, you're speaking about a small patch, but if it's a large piece of material, it will become tamei, even if it's not Tzemer Pishtim. Rav Papa told us, the first Tana is not even discussing Tumah, it's discussing Kalayim. The Gemara negated that. Nachman Yitzchak's approach was that the first Tana is not discussing Tumah, he's discussing Tzitzis. Indeed, the Gemara proceeded with the halach of Tzitzis. What about a tzitzit? What about a beged of other fibers, non-tzemer pishtim? Indeed, according to the Tana of Shmuel, it is pater from tzitzis. According to Rava, it's chayiv. Exus laila, a nighttime garment, is pater because the pasuk says "Urisam oisoi," needs to be visible. However, exus summa of a blind man is chayiv, and that is included in the words asher techasaba. It's going to be marbi, even exus summa. The Gemara proceeded by telling us there are sometimes fibers that are not really fully processed. Nevertheless, they can become tamei through a nega, and indeed that makes them unsuitable to be used as schach.